Let's go ahead and look at absolute value for 6th and 7th grade. Absolute value is a fancy term for the distance a number is from 0. Absolute value does not have a sign that goes with it. It is simply the number of spaces, which are always going to end up appearing like a positive number, from 0. So let's look at this. We are talking about, say, for instance, a number like -3. When we are trying to configure the absolute value of a number, we always write on the outside of it 2 parallel and vertical bars. And that indicates that we are looking for the absolute value of this, or we're looking for the distance of this number from 0. In order to find that out, we can see on a number line that -3 would be here. We are literally counting the distance as if your home were at 0 and your dog had run over to -3. Is a terrible dog. We want to know if your dog has run 3 houses to the left of your house, how many houses has it gone? How many spaces has it gone? Well, we can go ahead and we can count. 1, 2, 3 spaces. It has literally gone 3 spaces from 0, 3 spaces from your house. As you can see, the answer here, 3, is written as a positive number. It is written as simply the distance from your starting point to 0. Your number is always going to appear as if it were positive. Let's see another one. Let's say, for instance, we were talking about the depth of Mariana Trench. It is 11,035 meters below sea level, which is why this is negative. And if we were going to measure that from 0, our starting point would be 0. We are looking for the absolute value, so we need our 2 bars over on the left and the right. We want to know how many spaces from 0 -11,035 is. We could literally count all of those spaces to see that that is literally 11,035 spaces from 0. So the absolute value here would be 11,035. Now, what's interesting here is we could be talking about, say, for instance, the meter length of Mount Everest. Maybe we were talking about how high it was above sea level. While Mount Everest is approximately 8,848 meters above sea level, we can still find the absolute value of a positive number as well. Once we put that number inside of the absolute value bars, we know that we are simply counting the number of spaces traveled from 0 to whatever number it is that we are discussing. Now, the number of spaces between 0 and 8,848 is 8,848. Even with a positive number inside of our absolute value brackets is positive, or appears to be positive. So let's go ahead and try comparing some numbers, but I want you to realize that a positive number is always greater than a negative number. So say, for instance, we are comparing +4 and -2. If you had -$2, you would owe someone money. It is less than what you actually have If you had $4, you would have more than nothing, more than zero. Zero is your neutral number. Any number that's positive is greater than zero. Any number that's negative is less than zero. That's important to remember. When we're going to compare a negative number with another negative number, that's where we can use absolute value. So let's go ahead and let's look at, say for instance, -5 and -3. So we have a 0, this is a -3, and this is a -5. What we're going to do is we're going to compare the distance between 0 and -3. So we're really looking for that absolute value. When we're supposed to compare negative numbers, we can look for the absolute value of those numbers to decide which is actually larger or smaller. So the absolute value of -3 is, we could count 1, 2, 3 spaces, and the absolute value of -5 is 5 spaces. So the absolute value of -5 is 5 spaces. So if we looked at these two numbers, comparing the absolute value, we can see that the positive number that results, 5, is larger than 3. However, when we're comparing negative numbers that are outside of our absolute value, we use the absolute value to see which number is actually farther away from 0. Negative numbers that have a higher absolute value are smaller than negative numbers with a lower absolute value. So we can see with -3 and -5 has a larger absolute value. It is 5 spaces away from 0 as opposed to 3 spaces away from 0, which means that -5 is actually a smaller number. It is farther away from 0, farther away from being positive. You would rather owe someone $3 than owe them $5. That's what we're looking for here. What puts you closer to that black line, or that ability to be at neutral at 0, or even up towards positive. Let's try another one. Let's go ahead and look at, say for instance, -10, or let's do -6, and -10. So we're looking at -10 and -6. Now, mind you, we are comparing the actual negative integer here, but in order to help us, we are going to look for the absolute value. So the absolute value of -10 is 10. We know that from here to 0 is 10 spaces. Let's look at -6. The absolute value of -6 is 6, meaning from here to here is 6 spaces. We know that 10 spaces is a larger distance from 0, or a longer distance from 0. Because of that, mind you, negative numbers with higher absolute values are smaller than negative numbers with lower absolute values, which means that -10 is going to be less. You have less money if you owe someone -$10 than if you owe them -$6.